Starmer just wandered straight into a verbal wood chipper. And guess who's flooring the gas? Joe Rogan and JD Vance team up to slice through this political snooze fest with the sharp timing of a podcast hit squad. If you thought Starmer's personality was missing, just wait until they unpack his policies. Spoiler alert, they never show up. Brace yourself for blunt truth bombs, awkward laughs, and a level of roasting that makes marshmallows uneasy. Stick around. Starmer's career might be looking for witness protection after this. Keir Starmer, Britain's most human-shaped fog machine, just got verbally flattened, carefully taken apart, and neatly wrapped in political irrelevance by two men who couldn't be more different, yet share a deep dislike of waffle. Joe Rogan and JD Vance. And you know it's rough when JD Vance, a man who sounds like he was assembled in a Midwest garage using spare parts from a libertarian podcast, somehow makes more sense on British politics than the man aiming to be Prime Minister. Let's start with Starmer's greatest achievement, turning boredom into a weapon. This man speaks like a glitching AI trained only on insurance paperwork. His speeches are the sound version of beige wallpaper, slowly peeling away out of pure embarrassment. He's somehow managed to run a political campaign entirely on vibes. Very specific vibes, like a soggy rice cake left outside in the rain. And then Rogan storms in with all the subtlety of a bear wearing sunglasses indoors. He doesn't need a deep grasp of UK politics to smell nonsense when it's panting through a badly rehearsed soundbite. Within minutes, he's asking the obvious questions. How can one man be spineless and stiff at the same time? How does someone manage to mix hesitation and smug certainty in every sentence? Starmer looks ready to lead a revolution, but only if it's committee approved, filed in triplicate, and guaranteed not to upset the Liberal Democrats. JD Vance, meanwhile, jumps in swinging like a guy who discovered British politics on a dare. And yet, somehow, his outsider take makes more sense than anything that's come out of Starmer's mouth since he took the leadership crown from Jeremy Corbyn. Like a reluctant substitute teacher walking into a classroom already on fire, Vance just calls it as he sees it. Starmer's grand plan is to do everything the Tories did, but with more apologies and fewer facial expressions. And speaking of expressions, Starmer's face feels like a screensaver set to permanent disinterest. If you ran his entire campaign through an emotion detector, it would come back reading mild static in Comic Sans. Rogan practically pops a blood vessel trying to understand how someone can lead a major party while sounding like they're explaining return policies at a hardware store. He's not leading a political movement. He's managing a mid-level HR department in a collapsing office tower. Starmer's idea of bold reform is saying, let's do better, but with less excitement than someone ordering decaf at 3 a.m. He's built an entire political identity around not upsetting anyone, which somehow ends up being the most irritating thing about him. He could walk into a room full of toddlers and still leave polling below a fire alarm. Every time he speaks, you can almost hear Britain collectively wondering, is this really the guy? Rogan didn't need footnotes, he just laid it out plain. JD Vance couldn't believe it either. Imagine spending your whole career telling it like it is, raw and unfiltered, then running into Keir Starmer, a man who treats conviction like it's gluten and he's severely intolerant. Watching Starmer campaign feels like watching someone try to herd fog. He gestures vaguely, hoping the weather will eventually arrange itself into a manifesto. It's not that he has no principles, it's that he seems to have downloaded all of them at once, like a confused robot buffering between ideologies. Starmer doesn't stand for something. He floats gently near everything, like a puzzled hummingbird at a buffet of political nectar. One moment he's waving a progressive flag, the next he's smiling at investment bankers like he's auditioning for Most Lovable Technocrat 2025. If leadership had a Tinder profile, Starmer would swipe right on everyone, ghost half of them, then launch a speech about shared values while updating his policy document mid-sentence. And flip-flopping. Oh sweet democratic flip-flopping. Starmer changes direction more often than a Roomba trapped in a circular room. If he had a spirit animal, it would be a weather vane having a midlife crisis in a Category 5 hurricane. He's like a political shapeshifter, except every shape is made of lukewarm jelly. One day he's waving at striking workers like he's just remembered unions exist. The next day he's posting about fiscal responsibility on LinkedIn, like he's pitching a TED Talk titled "How to Kill Momentum with Spreadsheets." He makes promises the way toddlers make art, full of enthusiasm and zero context, and it all ends up in the recycling bin anyway. His idea of vision is photocopying conservative policy papers, doodling a little red heart in the corner, and calling it bold reform. Even JD Vance, a man who can smell a political cop-out from across the Atlantic, just stared in slack-jawed amazement as Starmer moonwalked out of yet another position he claimed to hold 5 minutes earlier. Rogan couldn't cope. He sat there blinking like someone had just described a diet made entirely of melted crayons. You could practically see the question on his face. How is this man not dizzy from all the U-turns? Starmer's strategy feels less like leadership and more like improv theatre, but with legislation. Every move is reactive. Every sentence is buried under so many disclaimers you'd need a lawyer just to work out if he meant anything at all. Watching Starmer try to state a clear position is like watching someone play political twister blindfolded, with 3 left feet and a deep fear of touching anything red. He shouts consensus every time he loses balance, which is often. He's not leading the Labour Party. He's dragging it behind him like a broken shopping trolley stuffed with unread focus group results and abandoned pledges. JD Vance nailed it. Starmer isn't offering solutions. He's offering software updates for Britain's operating system, slightly newer, just as buggy, and still crashing under pressure. His pitch is basically, don't worry, I won't do anything strange or noticeable. That's not governance. That's beige wallpaper trying to run for office. He wants Britain to become a moderately successful tech startup, powered by compromise and lukewarm coffee. And while the country is spinning through inflation, an NHATES on life support, and a housing market that feels like a bad prank, what does Starmer bring? The emotional intensity of a damp sock left behind in a budget hotel. His responses are so sterile they could disinfect surgical tools. While Rome burns, Starmer offers to host a constructive dialogue on fire safety next quarter, after consulting stakeholders. He doesn't confront problems, he schedules them. Britain is crying out for urgency, and he's sending calendar invites titled Strategic Brainstorm, Tentative. While people are shouting for answers, Starmer sends bullet points. He doesn't challenge the establishment. He writes it a polite memo, CCs the press office, and hides behind a curtain made entirely of conditional statements. This isn't leadership. It's a crisis helpline run by someone who answers every call with, tricky, let's revisit that next fiscal year. JD Vance said it best. Starmer's entire existence feels like a masterclass in political evasion. He's the kind of man who could get lost in a straight hallway. Someone who thinks strong leadership is whispering unity into a microphone while everyone else is shouting for clarity. Starmer's version of bold action is suggesting that maybe, someday, a new task force could be helpful. He talks about reform the way people talk about building IKEA furniture, cautiously, nervously, and always keeping an eye on the exit. And yet, he's sold as the safe choice. Safe. The man is so risk-averse he'd probably check both sides of a revolving door before stepping inside. If Britain wants vision, Starmer is offering a slightly smudged blueprint with a sticky note that says TBD. And when JD Vance, a man built like a bar rule in a book club, looks at you and says, even I don't understand what this guy stands for. It's not just bad, it's catastrophic. Because if clarity were currency, Starmer would be flat broke, borrowing talking points from expired think tanks. This is what happens when you build a political persona out of press releases, apologies, and fear of commitment. He isn't leading a party. He's managing public confusion. And the only truly consistent thing about Keir Starmer is his refusal to be consistent about anything at all. Joe Rogan didn't even have to throw punches. It was like roasting a paper bag with googly eyes. He highlighted that Starmer's leadership style makes watching paint dry feel like a rave. This is the man claiming he's ready to lead Britain into the future, but only after running 3 focus groups, checking in with his inner circle, and double-checking the vibes on LinkedIn. JD Vance piled on by noting that Starmer has no real base, just a scattered group of people who dislike the Conservatives slightly more than they distrust him. His supporters don't cheer, they sigh politely. If enthusiasm were fuel, Starmer's campaign bus would have stalled in a Waitrose parking lot months ago. You know your political brand is in trouble when JD Vance, a man built on dunking on elites, looks at your carefully curated nothingness and says, "Wow, even I wouldn't try that." Starmer isn't offending anyone, he's just leaving everyone confused. It's like trying to rally behind a screensaver. You stare long enough and start questioning your life choices. And the promises, oh the promises. Starmer delivers them like a magician pulling rabbits from a hat. But they're invisible rabbits, and the hat is stuffed with shredded manifestos from 2 weeks ago. He promises bold change, but only on PowerPoint slides. He vows to challenge the status quo, but only if the status quo approves. If he were any more cautious, he'd wear a helmet to bed. Rogan and Vance were on the same page about one thing. If this is what Britain calls leadership, it's time to check for carbon monoxide leaks. Starmer isn't a threat to the establishment. He is the establishment, just in a slightly more socially anxious edition. He's not here to shake things up. He's here to dust the shelves and rearrange the books alphabetically. By the end of the roast, Starmer had morphed from a politician into a cautionary tale. A reminder that charisma can't be downloaded, conviction can't be faked forever, and you can't lead a country by being everyone's least offensive option. Joe Rogan called him out like a confused gym trainer watching someone bench press bubble wrap. JD Vance delivered the final blow like a Southern lawyer dismissing a weak case with a smirk and a biscuit. Starmer wanted to be a unifier. What he became was a human screensaver, drifting between press conferences and policy reversals like a ghost hunting for a backbone. And if Rogan and Vance had anything to say about it, and they most definitely did, it's that Britain deserves more than a personality vacuum in a suit pretending to steer a ship while quietly Googling how to look decisive without upsetting anyone. Starmer walked into the political coliseum armed with nothing but a checklist and a vague sense of moderation, and got verbally mauled by a podcaster and a senator who weren't even trying that hard. Honestly, that's probably the most Starmer thing that could have possibly happened.